Jill Meagher described as having a vibrant personality that left a lasting impact on all those she met. It's no wonder that the horrific events that befell 29-year-old Jill Meagher in the early hours of September 22, 2012, ignited a resounding public outcry for reform within the Melbourne justice system that so tragically failed her. Born in Ireland in 1982 to parents George and Edith McKeon, Gillian, who went by the shortened Jill, was a bright young entertainer who dreamed of a life on the stage. Jill relocated to Australia at a young age when her father's job took the family to Perth. They were part of the British and Irish expatriate wave of the early 90s, whereby British nationals traveled to Australia for a more affluent lifestyle. The family seamlessly settled into their new home. Jill and her brother Michael attended Bull Creek Primary School, followed by Ross Moyne High School, where they quickly made friends with whom they remained close. Their mutual friend and neighbor, Matthew Griffiths, lived 2 doors from the McKeons in Bull Creek. Our families are very close. We grew up in a cul-de-sac where everyone was friends. We all played together in the street as kids, and I stayed close friends with Jill and Michael over the years, he said. Jill was just the most beautiful soul. She was nice to everyone she met and wouldn't hurt a fly. After 6 years abroad, the family returned to Ireland when Jill was 13. They settled back into their old home in Drogada's small industrial port town, where she would complete her education. She was very popular in high school. She was charming, well-mannered, and attractive. She could make everyone around her laugh. When Jill's parents, craving the laid-back lifestyle in the Australian sunshine, decided to permanently relocate to Perth, she chose to stay in Ireland and study for a Bachelor of Arts degree at University College Dublin. During her studies, she worked part-time at the student bar, where she met and fell in love with her future husband, Tom Meagher. The couple was devoted to each other, making plans for their life together from early on in their relationship. Completing several higher diplomas in project management and event management, Jill set her sights on a career in broadcasting and started a job with an Irish national broadcaster. Jill would travel overseas, working in various television, fashion, and arts positions in Dublin and Australia. After their marriage, Tom, who had never traveled much, suggested they have an adventure. Jill was quick to suggest moving to Australia. With her parents settling in Perth, the couple relocated to Melbourne. As a natural entertainer, Jill secured a role at the Australian Broadcasting Corporation, ABC, as a unit coordinator, occasionally allowing her to talk on air. She immediately became a treasured member of the team. On the evening of September 21, 2012, Jill was out with colleagues, traversing the bars on Sydney Road, celebrating a friend's birthday. On a busy Friday night, Sydney Road is a melting pot of culture, activity, and excitement, where the pulse of the city beats strongest. Jill had had a tough time recently. Her father had suffered a stroke. She had been on holiday in Ireland then and cut her trip short to be with him. Thankfully, he went on to make a full recovery. Still, it had been a challenging experience, so a fun night out was just what Jill needed to lift her spirits. At 1:30 a.m., the night was winding down, and Jill said her goodbyes. She and Tom lived in a flat, not 10 minutes walk from the bustling street. Consistently ranking high in global safety indexes and surveys, Melbourne is generally considered a safe city, so it was not unusual for Jill to walk home alone after an evening out. Tom had fallen asleep on the sofa. He woke to find a message from Jill from the night before, inviting him to join the festivities on Sydney Road. By then, it was 4 a.m., so he expected to find Jill home and asleep in their bed. There was no sign of her. Considering she had been so close to home when she messaged him, it seemed improbable that she would have ventured elsewhere. Contacting family and friends in search of her, he began to feel unsettled. He enlisted the help of his brother-in-law, Michael, who would continue to call Jill's phone while Tom went out on foot to retrace what would likely have been her steps from the night before. Little did anyone comprehend, at that time, the sinister truth of what had occurred to Jill on her short walk home. With no trace of her, Tom contacted the police. In the days that followed, Jill's colleagues at ABC took to social media to spread the word about her disappearance. They posted on Twitter and set up a dedicated Facebook page, "Help us find Jill Meagher," hoping to find her alive. They also launched a poster campaign. The lampposts of Melbourne were adorned with pictures of Jill's radiant smile. The police initially suspected Tom. Every 11 minutes, a woman is killed by someone in her family, with statistics demonstrating the husband is most often the perpetrator. The flat was searched, and police seized the couple's vehicle for testing. No one who knew Tom ever considered him responsible. Still, police and some extremist media distracted attention away from the real villain. On September 24th, Jill's handbag was found close to their flat. The area had previously been searched, sparking suspicions, but it soon became evident that a local man had made an error in judgment, taking the handbag and trying to subtly return it, when he realized the importance of the find. The lead was a dead end. On September 25th, CCTV footage emerged. The video was filmed inside the Duchess Boutique, a bridal shop on Sydney Road near Hope Street. The angle afforded a limited view of the street through its front windows. A man in a blue hoodie was captured loitering outside the shop. He was walking back and forth without purpose. At 1:42 a.m., Jill enters the frame. She is looking at her phone, seemingly avoiding the man, but still with her trademark likability. The pair exit the structure, the man in the blue hoodie following behind Jill. Upon release of the footage, 550 people called in tips, which included reports of attempted abductions in the same area by a person matching the description of the man in the blue hoodie. A track on Jill's phone from the night of her disappearance showed her mobile device seemed to be traveling by car. The police checked camera footage from a toll along the journey. They ran the number plates through their systems and came across the vehicle of a known local sex offender. The investigation changed course. No longer was Jill a missing person. This was now a suspected homicide. Born in 1971 in Coburg, Victoria, Australia, Adrian Ernest Edwards, later known as Bailey, grew up in the Melbourne area and had a troubled upbringing, including encounters with the criminal justice system from a young age. The oldest of 5 siblings, he would later claim to have been sexually abused from the age of 9, allegations that have never been substantiated. Prone to outbursts of uncontrollable anger, Bailey's criminal record dates back to his teenage years and includes convictions for a range of offenses, including assault, burglary, and drug-related charges. His criminal behavior escalated over time, leading to more severe crimes. At 18, he married his then-pregnant girlfriend. They had 2 children together. A few weeks into their marriage, he committed his first sexual assault, which we know of. He asked a 16-year-old friend of his sister to help him organize a birthday party for his new wife. He proceeded to hold her against her will and assault her. He was charged 2 days later. He denied the allegations and was released on bail. This would be just the beginning of a life without consequences, thanks to the failings of the Melbourne criminal justice system. Less than a month later, Bailey grabbed a 17-year-old girl from the street, stabbed her eyes in an attempt to blind her, tried to rape her, and threatened to kill her. She reported him 2 weeks later. Again, he denied the allegations, and again, he was released on bail. Another failed opportunity to keep a dangerous reoffender off the streets. Later that same year, he picked up a hitchhiker, drove her to a remote area, and tried to force her into oral sex. She escaped and reported him. Again, he denied the allegations and was released. The following year, he appeared in court for all 3 offenses. His defense claimed he was remorseful of the crimes and was struggling with his mental health. The judge wasn't convinced, but sentenced him to just 5 years. After 22 months, he was back out on the streets. In 1995, he separated from his wife and had 2 more children with another woman. He changed his name by deed poll, a calculated act that would essentially expunge his history of serious violent offenses. With a new name secured, he changed tact, opting to assault sex workers who were less likely to report him and less likely to be listened to. While driving home from work, he would pick up a sex worker and take them to a secluded location where she wouldn't be heard and she couldn't escape. His tastes had escalated, and his attacks became more violent than ever. 16 women reported him before he was arrested. DNA tests confirmed his guilt. He was charged with 43 counts, including rape, threats to kill, false imprisonment, and causing injury. Yet again, he was inexplicably released on bail. A few months later, he pled guilty to 16 counts of rape. The court would hear that not only had he perpetrated these crimes, but that he was also violent towards his partner. Having 2 children together, she stood by him, so no charges were officially brought. Bailey was diagnosed with a borderline personality and an antisocial type. The judge declared him a danger to society and unlikely to be rehabilitated, sentencing him to 11 years in prison. He served less than 8 before he was back out on the streets. He was released on standard supervision. The judge's recommendations were not followed, and the arresting officers were unaware of his release. In less than 8 years, he'd gone from charges of 43 counts of violence against women to seamlessly integrating back into an unwitting society. His DNA was not kept on file. In 2012, while inebriated, he broke a man's jaw in a violent, unprovoked attack. He successfully appealed his 3-month sentence, and his parole for the 16 counts of rape was unaffected. He went on to incur 5 parole violations, none of which were ever enforced. He often missed meetings, he drank, he broke curfew. He seemed to live a charmed life, getting away with his violent crimes against women with little to no legal intervention or consequence. On the evening of September 21, 2012, while Jill was out on a much-needed relaxed evening with friends, Bailey was at the Quiet Man Hotel with his latest partner, attending a function organized by his employer. Neither his employer nor girlfriend were aware he was on parole or that he'd served time in prison. The couple left the party in a taxi with another friend, heading to a Swanson Street bar. An argument broke out, resulting in Bailey's partner leaving the pub. Upon realizing she had gone, he was furious. CCTV footage in the bar shows him stomping around and behaving aggressively. Infuriated, he returned home, only to find that his girlfriend had left. He changed his clothes, opting for a blue hoodie, and headed back out in a taxi on the pretense of collecting his car from the Quiet Man Hotel. He seemed to be very drunk, and the taxi driver was anxious that his passenger was going to vomit. He refused to take him further than Sydney Road. On Sydney Road, Bailey paced angrily, his back and forth captured by the CCTV footage from the bridal boutique. Upon release of the footage, the subsequent tips, and the tracking data from Jill's phone, police were optimistic they'd found their killer. Police searched his property and discovered remnants of a smashed-up mobile phone, a SIM card his girlfriend had found in the washing machine, and a shovel, with dirt still eerily present from recent use. Bailey assumed the following questioning was just procedure, the authorities talking to known local offenders. Little did he realize that he had been the investigation's sole focus over recent days. Under interrogation, Bailey claimed that on the night of Jill's disappearance, he'd been out drinking, had argued with his girlfriend, and proceeded to go out in her car in search of her. When advised that the location of his mobile phone told a different story, he was at a loss, denying being out in the countryside. The damning phone evidence and the discovery of Jill's SIM card in his house were impossible to contradict. Through crocodile tears, he finally admitted to seeing Jill that night. According to Bailey, she was upset, so he walked with her. She was drunk and told him to fuck off. Apparently, enraged by her lack of respect, he strangled her. He dragged her to a back alley just minutes from her home, where he raped and murdered her. Knowing he needed to get rid of the body, he left her, went home, changed his clothes, and got into his girlfriend's car, which was registered in his name. He returned to the scene of the crime, not at all concerned that her body may have been found during his absence. He loaded her torn clothes and her mobile phone into the car's boot. At 4:26 a.m., the vehicle is captured on CCTV leaving the crime scene. He traveled out into the country in search of a desolated spot to conceal the body. He ended up at Black Hill Road, a rural dirt track 50 kilometers from Brunswick. He dug a shallow hole, barely deep enough to cover her lifeless body, a testament to his arrogance. He made several calls to a workmate, a lazy attempt at securing a half-hearted alibi he no doubt assumed wouldn't be required. Heading back to the city, he ran out of petrol and hailed a passerby who agreed to drive him to a petrol station. When he eventually arrived home, his landlady wondered why he'd been out. He fabricated a lie about being on a call-out all night. Inside, he smashed Jill's phone and made amends with his girlfriend. There was a bruise on his face he passed off as resulting from a drunken altercation with a pair of men the night before. Satisfied with his apology, the couple went to sleep. While Tom was frantically searching for his beautiful and beloved wife, Bailey slept until late, picked up his car from the Quiet Man Hotel, grabbed some takeout food, and spent the afternoon watching movies with his girlfriend, utterly bereft of concern. On Sunday night, he detailed the car inside and out. He repeated the process the following day, ensuring no sign of Jill. He got new tires and transferred the vehicle to his girlfriend's name, disassociating himself from the crime as much as possible. 5 days after her disappearance, Bailey was in court to hear the charges read against him. This time, finally, there was no bail. Eventually, Bailey led the police to the burial site. The body was battered and bruised, showing signs that the murder had been brutal. A sustained and consistent compression of the neck was deemed the final cause of death. Social media had blown up with details of the crime released, and the general public came up with theories and discussed the case's implications on the criminal justice system. It took a macabre turn, with the public calling for the death penalty and musing over revenge tactics. It became impossible to secure a neutral jury. Bailey had already undergone trial by the media. As a result, the court ordered Bailey could no longer be discussed online, not by the media or the general public. Bailey was charged with rape and murder in an out-of-sessions hearing that lasted 90 seconds. He was held on remand to await trial. While in custody, he apparently attempted suicide. The wounds were insignificant, but as a result, he was placed in confinement under guard. On April 5, 2013, he pleaded guilty to rape and murder. On April 26, 2013, he pleaded not guilty to several other sexual assaults in Melbourne dating back to 2000. Bailey appeared in court on June 11, 2013, for a pre-sentencing hearing. On the date of the pre-sentencing hearing, the suppression order was also lifted, allowing Bailey's violent criminal record to be revealed. On June 19, 2013, Bailey was sentenced to life imprisonment with a non-parole period of 35 years. Her story led to public outrage as the Australian public learned that the man responsible had multiple convictions for similar crimes and yet was walking the streets, unpunished and unremorseful, freely available to abduct and murder his next victim. 30,000 people walked the Sydney Road in memory of Jill and the preventable crimes against her. The march also symbolized broader concerns about violence against women. The Reclaim the Night movement organized a second march in reaction to Jill's death. Reclaim the Night started in England in response to the crimes of serial killer Peter Sutcliffe. In the 70s, authorities advised women to avoid being out alone at night. Infuriated by the implication that women take responsibility for being murdered by men, the women's liberation movement drew inspiration from a march held in Brussels in 1976, the first documented incidents of an organized urban women's nighttime march, protesting male violence against women. Following Jill's murder, the Victoria Police's DNA database came under criticism. DNA evidence from the violent assaults on sex workers that resulted in his longest prison sentence so far was not kept following Bailey's return to society, in addition to the enormous list of judicial failures that led to Jill's untimely death. DNA database management was redressed to create a more robust system. There was an investigation into parole laws and a subsequent reform to strengthen them. If parole is breached, perpetrators can now be penalized with up to 3 months imprisonment and a fine of up to $4,200. Police can now formally take action if a parolee breaches parole, and violent offenders are automatically returned to prison if the breach is considered severe. Although these changes to the Melbourne criminal justice system came too late to save Jill from Adrian Bailey's hands, they do somehow honor her memory. Then Premier of Victoria, Dennis Napthine, commented in June 2013, "There is no doubt the system failed Jill Meagher. Under the introduced changes, the offender would have been back in jail, not on the streets. Our actions are the minimum we can do to ensure this never ever happens again." In August 2013, former High Court Justice Ian Callanan recommended 23 more changes to the Victorian parole system. Since her murder, Jill's husband, Tom, has become an advocate for women's rights and an avid supporter of the White Ribbon Movement, a campaign to stop violence against women. His essay about public stereotypes of rapists, The Danger of the Monster Myth, can be found on the White Ribbon website.